Now before we begin today's video, I'd like to introduce you to this little cutie pie. He's Mr. Foxy. Isn't he gorgeous? Say hello, Mr. Foxy. Hello! I don't know what it was. Now this little Foxy is basically going to become the main character of this video because I thought it would be a nice idea to kind of decorate this little fella and then maybe come up with some little accompanying illustrations or character designs and basically use Mr. Fox here as a bit of a muse for some artwork. What I think I might do is use this Enchanted Forest illustration that I've been working on recently as like a source of inspiration and to kind of help narrow down my ideas a bit. So let me grab some art materials. I've got my nice little sketchbook here. Let me grab some pencils, go from there, and hopefully we can get this little Foxy decorated a bit because he's looking a little bit mucky at the moment. I don't know what these are. Let's get sketching and let's get into this video. So I grabbed a mechanical pencil and basically just started sketching out some toadstools, sketching fairly lightly at first to get an idea of the basic shape and structure, and pressing slightly harder when I was more confident that I'd studied the toadstools correctly. I tried to sketch the toadstools in various positions, shapes and sizes, and then spent quite a bit of time focusing on sketching out the spot details, as I felt that it was important to get these correct as I think they are like the most distinguishable feature of a toadstool. So I wanted to work out if there was any like specific pattern or shape to them, or if they were just a bit more random. I then started sketching some bluebells in different positions. I like to try and draw the things that I'm studying in a variety of different positions just so that I get a bit of a better understanding of their shape and structure, so that if I want to feature them in an illustration or a piece of artwork in the future, I can then adapt them without kind of losing the key features that make them what they are. Finally, to fill up the spread, I decided to sketch out some fern leaves that are commonly found in forests, and again spent time focusing on getting the shapes of the leaves right and looking at how they attach to branches and stuff like that. Not gonna lie, at this point the sketchbook spread was looking a little bit bland for my liking, so I grabbed some watercolour paint and painted a blue to green gradient wash to create a page background. And then it was time to start painting the toadstools, so I grabbed my acrylic paints, as these were the paints that I was planning to use on Mr. Foxy, and started practicing painting the toadstools. I really love building up the bright vibrant red and orange colours on the toadstools, and found that the best way to keep the vibrancy I wanted was to work in layers, starting with the darker colours and then gradually layering and blending in the lighter colours. Painting the white stems of the toadstools was probably the most difficult part, as there were very subtle shades and differences in colour, but again I found it was basically just a case of building up layers and adding highlights here and there. I then painted some of the bluebell studies using a mixture of blues and pinks and purples. I think at this point I did also get out some water soluble pencils just to refine some of the shapes of the flower petals, adding shading and creating some marks and details that I felt I couldn't achieve with a paintbrush. I then painted the leaves and then added some finishing touches to the sketchbook spread using some alcohol markers and some paint. I've just finished doing a few little practice studies of some toadstools and some leaves and some other little forest fauna or flora or whatever you call it. Managed to get like a little swatch of different colours that I could use for like a character design, and also I kind of had a bit of a look at what kind of colour I could use on the background for Mr. Fox here, because I think what I'll probably have to do is to get rid of all of these little marks and stuff on him, I'll probably have to paint like a background colour first. So now I need to start actually thinking about what I'm going to do to decorate little Foxy here. I think what I'm probably going to do is just grab a pencil, and I think I'm just going to quickly thumbnail just really roughly the rough idea of what I want to do for the designs. So what I think I'm going to do is, because I've got a stronger idea of what I want to do on the back, I'm just going to start by drawing the back of him. I only need to do like a little small study. So there's a circle, his head here, and that's a curvy bit for his tail. Right, that's the back. Okay, so they are just some little rough thumbnails of him. So what I'm just going to start doing is just referring back to my toadstools and just kind of plotting out where I might want to put a few little things. They don't have to be exactly the same as the ones that I studied. These are just more for like inspiration. I've got a really strong vision of like having a big giant spotty toadstool on the back of his head. So let me figure out where that could go. A little bit of spottiness, funny little toadstool skirt, and then I think this bit here, which is also this bit here, can have toadstool on it. So that'll be on like that sort of, and you'd be able to see the rest of this toadstool probably like there-ish. And this toadstool trunk, stem, base, I don't know what you call it. And then probably be like nice to have a little toadstool maybe here-ish and again curve it inwards. So there would be my little toadstool positions with a little bit of finessing of the toadstool skirt. So I'm going to call them toadstool skirt, the bits that come underneath. Part of me just kind of wants to keep this bit more so you can see that it's a fox. So you've got nose, eye, white bit, make sure I've got the black bits of the ear, black bits of the ear. So it's more kind of hinting at a fox hiding in amongst toadstools and foliage. Because my original plan was that I was just going to paint the whole thing green and kind of disguise the fact that it's a fox. But actually I quite like the fact of just kind of sort of trying to keep Mr. Foxy's character. I'm probably going to end up painting a background of red base and then using the purples and greens to paint the leaves and stuff on. I think I'm probably just gonna go for it. So I placed Mr. Foxy on my spinny winny whirly thingy and then proceeded to mix up an orangey red foxy colour and painted a base layer of colours on Mr. Foxy using a big flat brush. So I've just finished painting the base layer on Mr. Fox. Not gonna lie, I think it's probably gonna end up changing quite a little bit because I actually think, now thinking about it, it's probably too similar in colour to the actual toadstool. Yeah, it is quite similar. So I think it might end up becoming quite a bit darker so that the toadstools can stand out a little bit more. But as a little base colour, it's alright, and it's covered up all the little mucky patches and stuff like that. It's still sort of drying a little bit. So I think what I'm gonna probably do is just put him to one side a minute and start actually working on a little bit of a character design. Might be able to help me work out like whereabouts I'm going to put all the white markings and if I'm going to introduce any other colours into him, because obviously I think the best way that I'm going to approach this is to actually paint the little fox details first and then paint, oh I've missed a bit, that'll get covered up eventually. In fact, hold on, let me just quickly turn to this a bit. Okay. Bonus points to me for not getting all like my hands all mucky. I'm usually end up getting filthy when I do stuff like this, but I think this little twisty thing has come in quite handy. Put him over to one side. Right, yeah, so what was I saying? Yeah, so I think the best way to tackle actually decorating it properly is to probably paint the fox character and the fox features first, and then paint the toadstools and the bluebells and the leaves and stuff on the top afterwards. So whilst he's drying, I think I'm just going to sit and kind of do a little character design that can then inspire what I want him to look like. Right, so I'm going to try and fill in this gap here. So using Mr. Foxy as a bit of a muse, I proceeded to sketch out a character design. You may notice that I made his face a bit more chunky and pointier than the model because I felt like it would help make the character look younger and would give him like a cheeky, inquisitive character. I also decided to add some muddy patches to his character design as I like the idea that he's always getting muddy whilst playing and getting up to mischief. Again, I used some acrylic paints to paint the character design. I decided that I liked the idea of using hints of yellow to add pops of colour to his design. I also like the idea of using purple as a character colour as well, so I basically used purple instead of black, and I used a purple Spectrum Noir alcohol marker to refine the sketch and add some details. Once I'd planned out the colours on the character design illustration, I moved on to painting the corresponding details on the ceramic model itself. I started off using some Liquitex white acrylic paints just to paint the white patches on his face, tail, belly and in his ears. Not gonna lie, I originally thought that this was going to require a lot of layers of paint, however the white Liquitex was really pigmented, so it was strong enough to only acquire one, maybe two layers, which I was really happy about as it saved me a lot of time. The yellow paint on the other hand did struggle a little bit, so I had to paint on a few layers, and you'll see later on that I did have to go back and work into the yellow patches a bit more. I then decided to paint the nose and eyes, which I was really happy with as they looked really cute, and at this stage I could finally see Mr. Fox's character coming to life. At this point I then mixed up a darker red colour and started painting over the base layer of red. For the life of me I don't know why I decided to do this now rather than before I'd painted on the other features, as it did make my life a little bit harder, but it actually did work out okay because it allowed me to neaten up a few areas and cover up some accidental splodges of yellow and white paint, and some of the brush marks did leave some interesting textures on Mr. Foxy that resembled fur. okay, so quick little update. I've just finished doing like the little fox detail layer on Mr. Foxy here. I think it's turned out pretty cute. I quite like how it does look fairly similar to my little illustration that I've done. But now I need to start adding in the little toadstools and the leaves and the bluebells. I think they're bluebells. Foxgloves, I don't know. The little purpley flower plant things. So yeah, that is going to be the next stage. So in a similar way to how I created the toadstools and flowers in my sketchbook studies, and using my thumbnail designs as reference, I proceeded to use acrylic paints to build up layers of colour and detail on my design. I did find that because the base colour of Mr. Foxy was quite dark, I did have to paint a layer of light colour first and then paint the dark colours and then apply the midtones and highlights again, still gradually building and layering colours until I got the desired effect. You may notice that before painting the design, I'd lightly sketched the design in pencil just to get the correct placement. The majority of time this didn't cause me any issues, however there were a few times when I was using lighter or less pigmented colours such as yellow that the paint kept picking up the graphite a little bit. This was soon sorted out after a couple of layers of paint. However, if I was to do something like this again in the future, I'd probably use something like chalk or white pencil or something like that just to sketch out the design in the first place, just to overcome this issue. Once I had the basic design painted on Mr. Foxy, I grabbed a smaller brush and started refining the shapes and adding detail, referring back to the studies in my sketchbooks for guidance and inspiration. At this point I became really happy with the design and felt like it was coming together quite well, but what I wanted to do was make some of the parts of the design have a bit more of a brighter, intense colour, especially some of the darker patches, because I felt they were a little bit too subtle and not contrasting enough. So I grabbed some alcohol markers and some acrylic paint pens and then worked into the design, specifically focusing on the dark areas, trying to make them a bit more sharper and crisper, and yeah, just basically cleaning everything up a little bit. And then for the final finishing touches of detail, I basically just grabbed some metallic paints to add some sparkly highlights to the toadstools and to give Mr. Foxy some sparkly shiny paws. I think my little Mr. Foxy here is finally painted. I'm actually really happy with how he turned out. There's little bits which I'd probably improve, but I need to get like some like thinner paint brushes and stuff like that. Especially love his like little shiny purpley sparkly boots that he's got on. One more thing that I just want to do in this video, and that is that I'd quite like to kind of do a little illustration that kind of sums up everything that I've done in this video. Got out of my box like a pile of little red colouring pencils just because he's a fox and he's got red in him, so I thought I'd do some sketching in some little red colouring pencils. I think what I'm just going to sit and do is just thumbnail out a few little illustration ideas, maybe do a few more little character studies of Mr. Foxy. I do still need to find a proper name for Mr. Foxy. Maybe in the comment section below you could give him like a little name, but yeah, I want to kind of do some little character studies of Mr. Foxy and just see if I can come up with like a little sum it up illustration. So I started off by sketching Mr. Foxy in a few different positions. The first position I felt was a bit stagnant and didn't really tell me much about Mr. Foxy's character, so I quickly abandoned that idea and moved on to some different poses that I thought would tell a bit more of a story. I remember that when doing the original character design, I really liked the idea that he was a bit of a playful mucky pup, so I started to try and draw him in poses that showed him playing in and around a muddy puddle. I sort of hit on a pose that I felt looked like Mr. Foxy was playing and interacting with another character, so I introduced a butterfly character to the idea, and that is when the story behind the illustration started to formulate. So I started developing a little story idea where Mr. Foxy was excited and playful after discovering a new butterfly friend. So once I had a basic story idea behind the piece, it started coming together a little bit more. So I started trying to improve Mr. Foxy's position using different coloured pencils, and at this point I also decided to add another frog character to the piece to tie in with the story idea that I developed in my head, and decided to sketch him sitting on one of the toadstools. Because the thumbnail and sketchbook spread as a whole had become a little bit messy and confused, I then grabbed a piece of tracing paper and drew over the top of the basic design, gradually improving different areas. This is where I find using things like tracing paper to be very helpful, as it allows me to see the original sketch underneath, which meant I could then keep areas that I liked the same and adjust areas that I thought needed to be improved. Once I had the basic sketch on the tracing paper, I quickly moved over to my light box and traced the basic composition onto a spare piece of paper, and then moved back to my desk where I worked on developing the composition further. I wanted to really show Mr. Foxy's curious nature a little bit more, so I worked on changing the position of his ears a bit more, just to make him look a little bit more inquisitive and alert. I then started filling in the composition a little bit by adding leaves and flowers and grass, using studies that I'd done in my sketchbook previously as reference. The last thing I'd done was improve the shape of the butterfly, and then at this point it was time to get on with painting the final illustration. So for the final time I went over to my light box and traced a now fleshed out composition onto a piece of proper heavyweight art paper using a very thin pencil. I then got out the various paints and art materials that I'd used throughout this video at various points and began building up layers of colours, details and line work to create the final illustration. And here it is, it's the final little finished artwork that I produced for this little video. Not gonna lie, I am really actually very happy with this piece. It's got like a very storybook quality to it, which is what I was aiming for. Usually I'd probably add a bit more detail to the piece, but I actually feel like keeping it a bit more like simplistic has really helped it. And I really like all the colours in it, and actually, I don't know if it picks up very well on the camera, maybe if I like wiggle it around a bit, but there's like little patches of like shiny bits where I used some like metallic paint and stuff. I didn't want to go too over the top with all the metallic paint, but I think when I wiggle it around a little bit you can see some of the shininess on it. But yeah, I think Mr. Foxy looks absolutely cute and adorable in it. Obviously he's based on Mr. Foxy, my little ceramic model, who I think looks really cute as well. Now I'm not gonna lie, I actually did at one point sit and write like a little story to go with this little illustration, so I'm not gonna read it out to you today. It's kind of like a little story sample or excerpt or whatever you call it. I'd actually quite like to kind of do like a little separate video where I do read the story and either do like a few little animations or a few little other illustrations to go with it, or just kind of read out the story whilst you're watching the painting being produced again. But yeah, I'd like to do like a little video like that in the future, so if you'd like to see that then please let me know. But yeah, this has been a very productive little video. So anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you liked it and that you liked the piece of artwork that I came up with. If you did, then please remember to like it and leave a little comment in the section below. Please remember to subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you again soon with another arty crafty video. Bye!